At the dinner table, surrounded by relatives I thought loved me, my world shattered in a single moment. My parents didn't raise their voices, they didn't argue. Instead, with cold calmness, they looked me in the eyes and said the words I'll never forget. "You are a burden. We want to live without you." The clinking of silverware stopped, everyone froze, and my heart sank so deep it felt like the air was stolen from the room. I laughed nervously, hoping it was a cruel joke, but their silence confirmed it wasn't. I wanted to scream, cry, ask why, but all I did was sit there, forcing myself not to break in front of them. They thought they'd crushed me that night. They thought I'd quietly disappear from their lives. But what they didn't know was that their betrayal lit a fire inside me that would change everything. Hey everyone, welcome back to Revenge Flame, the place where hidden pain turns into unforgettable stories of strength and justice. If you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because every week we share powerful tales that remind us how betrayal can transform into resilience. Here we don't just tell stories, we relive them. The heartbreak, the betrayal, the tears, and then the moment where the tables finally turn. These aren't just stories. They're proof that no matter how badly someone tries to break you, you can rise stronger. So grab a seat, because today's story will pull you deep into a moment no child should ever experience. A dinner table filled with food, but poisoned by words that cut deeper than any knife. And the revenge that followed? Trust me, it's one you won't see coming. I grew up in a family that, from the outside, looked perfectly normal. Smiles in photographs, polite words in public, and a house that seemed warm to anyone who visited. But behind closed doors, the truth was different. I was the quiet one, the child who never demanded much, who worked hard in school, who tried to keep the peace. My parents, they adored appearances. They wanted to look like the perfect happy couple raising the perfect children. And my younger brother, he was their golden child, the one who could do no wrong. Every success of his was celebrated, every failure brushed under the rug. Meanwhile, I was treated like the shadow. No matter what I achieved, it was never enough. At family gatherings, I was the one asked to serve food, clean up, or stay silent so others could shine. I told myself for years that one day they would see my worth. But that hope came crashing down during one dinner, the night when my parents looked at me in front of everyone and declared that I was nothing but a burden. That night at dinner, I could feel the tension long before the words were spoken. My parents were dressed in their best clothes. My brother was cracking jokes to entertain the table, and the relatives seemed cheerful. But beneath the laughter, I felt it, the sharp glances, the sighs, the subtle comments aimed only at me. I had just shared news that I'd been promoted at work, something I had worked tirelessly for. Instead of congratulations, my parents exchanged a look, the kind that said, "Here we go again." My brother smirked and made a joke about how I was probably just lucky, not talented. Everyone laughed. Everyone but me. As the plates were passed around, my mother kept sighing louder, as if even my presence was exhausting her. My father finally leaned back in his chair, cleared his throat and said, "We've been meaning to talk to you." The room went quiet. He spoke slowly, almost rehearsed. "You've become a burden. We don't want to keep carrying you anymore. We want to live without you." The words pierced the air sharper than any knife. I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth. My heart raced, but my voice caught in my throat. The silence that followed was worse than their cruelty. Not one relative defended me. They just looked down at their plates, pretending nothing had happened. It was in that silence I realized I was truly alone at that table. Or at least, that's what they wanted me to believe. At first, I thought it had to be a joke. How could parents, the people who raised me, say something so cruel in front of everyone? I forced a small laugh, waiting for them to smile and say they were kidding. But they didn't. Their faces stayed cold. Their eyes locked on me like I was some unwanted guest at my own family's table. My chest tightened, heat rushing to my face. I looked at my brother, hoping for even the smallest sign of support. But he only smirked, stabbing his fork into his steak as if my humiliation was his entertainment. My relatives avoided my gaze, pretending their food suddenly became fascinating. Not one person stood up for me. The betrayal cut deeper than their words. It wasn't just that they called me a burden. It was the way the whole room silently agreed. My achievements, my sacrifices, the nights I stayed up working to prove myself, none of it mattered. To them, I was just extra weight. Anger bubbled beneath my hurt, mixing with confusion. Why me? Why was I the one singled out, when I had given them everything I could? That night, my tears stayed hidden, but inside, something cracked. Wasn't just hurt. I was done being silent, and though they didn't know it yet, I was already planning how to make them regret every word they spoke. In the days after that dinner, I replayed their words again and again in my head. You are a burden. We want to live without you. At first I felt crushed, but soon that pain hardened into something else: determination. If they truly believed I was worthless, then I would show them just how wrong they were. Quietly, I started building my plan. For years, I had been the one supporting them in ways they never even noticed, helping pay bills, covering my brother's mistakes, even working overtime so the family wouldn't fall behind. They thought I was invisible, but I was the backbone. So I stopped every payment, every favor, every silent sacrifice. I cut it off. Bills went unpaid, my brother's debts piled up, and suddenly the perfect picture they had painted for the world started to crack. Relatives who once praised them began whispering about their financial troubles. Their golden child couldn't maintain his lifestyle without me cleaning up after him. And then came the real turning point. At the next family gathering, when whispers about their struggles grew louder, I stood up and calmly laid out the truth. For years, I had been the one carrying them. Me, the so-called burden. I listed the bills I paid, the loans I covered, the nights I sacrificed while they took me for granted. The room fell into stunned silence. My parents' faces turned pale. My brother's smirk vanished. And suddenly the narrative flipped. They weren't victims of a burden. They were exposed as users who had built their comfort on my back. That night I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I simply walked away, leaving them to face the shame of their own words. And for the first time in my life, I felt free. The fallout was immediate. My brother stormed out of the room, his pride shattered in front of the very relatives he always sought to impress. My parents sat frozen, unable to defend themselves as whispers spread across the table. The people who once looked at me as the quiet, useless child were now seeing the truth that without me, the family they idolized couldn't even stand on its own. In the weeks that followed, I kept my distance. The phone calls came first angry, then desperate, but I ignored them all. I had carried them for too long, and finally I was done. Bills went unpaid, their reputations slipped, and relatives who once favored them began questioning their choices. As for me, I poured my time and energy into my own life. For the first time, I wasn't living to please them, I was living for myself. My revenge wasn't loud, it wasn't cruel, it was simply the truth laid bare. And in that truth, they lost the control they once had over me. Looking back now, I realized that night at the dinner table was more than just a moment of cruelty. It was the breaking point of years of silence, years of being taken for granted. For so long, I thought love meant sacrificing without question. But what I learned is that love without respect is nothing more than control. Did I go too far? Maybe some would say yes. Exposing them in front of the same relatives who once ignored my pain was harsh. But for me, it wasn't about revenge. For the sake of hurting them, it was about reclaiming my voice, the same voice they tried to silence when they called me a burden. Sometimes the strongest revenge isn't shouting or fighting back. It's stepping away, letting the truth speak louder than your pain, and watching the people who underestimated you face the weight of their own actions. If you've ever felt invisible, unwanted, or undervalued, remember this: your worth isn't defined by those who fail to see it. Sometimes walking away is the loudest, most powerful answer you can give. And in my case, that answer changed everything, and that's how I turned their cruelest words into the strength I needed to finally break free. But now I want to hear from you. If you were sitting at that dinner table and your own parents looked you in the eyes and called you a burden, what would you have done? Would you have stayed quiet, or would you have fought back in your own way? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because your perspective might just help someone else who's going through the same silent battles right now. And if this story moved you, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps more people find our channel. Share this video with a friend who needs a reminder that they're not alone. And of course, subscribe so you never miss the next revenge story we bring to life. Because here on Revenge Flame, every story has a spark, and sometimes that spark becomes a fire no one sees coming. I'll see you in the next one.